If you'll bear with us a couple minutes, I think we're going to try and get a PowerPoint presentation loaded up here, but while that's happening, I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Michigan House Majority Whip Pete Lund. Majority Whip Lund is serving his third term in the Michigan House. He serves as Whip and Chair of the House Insurance Committee and House Government Operations Committee. In 2010 and 2012, he led the House Republican campaign effort in Michigan, leading to a 20-seat gain and Republican control of the House. Prior to his election to the House, Lund served on the Macomb County Commission for 11 years and taught public finance and economics at Walsh College for 20 years. And he also owned a small business. So I think we may have to give it a couple more minutes while we figure it out. But thanks so much.
Make sure I have my wall working on Mark Rubio. Well, first of all, it's great to be here with GOPAC as always. I know I've talked about this before, but growing up politically in the 80s, so many of us young conservatives went around and we were driving all over the state of Michigan or Europe states, listening to GOPAC tapes, hearing Jack Kemp and Newt Gingrich talk about the positive sides of conservatism and really how we can make things change in this country. And it was just a true honor to be a part of GOPAC when I was first asked to, and I've been happy to do it since. After for a second. It was great to hear one of the previous speakers talk about how we've got 50 states out there trying and experimenting. And it amazes me that we've got 50 states experimenting, so many of them with success, yet in Washington we still come back to the fact that they can't come up with any solutions. And the solutions aren't easy. But sometimes they're in front of us and it's just not willing to take the action. In Michigan, thank you, we've done a lot of things, and I'm going to focus in on the things we've done this past year. If we went back 2 years ago, we've done even more things. But we sat up, Republicans sat in the House and we talked about this and we said, look, we want to be bold. We want to make changes. We want to make hard changes. And when we went up for our re-elections, we told people that we're going to make the tough decisions. You might not like everything that we do, but Lansing was broken and we want to change the direction of the state. And we're proud as heck to say that what we did has worked. Unlike this clicker. There we go. Okay, I want to cover a few things that we're doing here in Michigan. For Toronto, first of all, effective government, we've done a few things. Started off, we didn't really pay it down, but we reduced our long-term debt by over $20 billion with a B dollars. And we did that in the way we changed our teacher retirement. We did that some other things along the way, but we've drastically reduced it. And this is the type of thing, it's not like in a pension fund where it's so easily defined. These are numbers that are out there that I think a lot of the states have with long-term liabilities beyond pensions, but rather for health care and things along those lines. So we took a good hard look at it, and it's a quiet thing, but it's a thing that's helped us greatly. And this is one of the reasons also that our state actually got upgraded recently with our bond rating, which is something we're very proud of. For the first time, we've actually used performance measures for local governments and schools. And this is sort of using the carrot rather than a stick approach. While we're doing a stick along the way as well at times, by doing this, we're putting out there best practices ideas, saying, look, if your school district does 4 of the 5 following best practices, you'll get additional monies. And we've had a lot of local government people talk about how they want to do these things, but they've got the pressure. And now all of a sudden, here's the incentive to actually go out and make your employees pay 20% of their health care costs. Those are the type of things we've used to incentivize the local communities to make the changes. One of the fun ones, University of Michigan, their board is controlled by 6 Democrats, and they decided they were going to give the graduate students who are research assistants there, we're going to make them union members. Students are union members rather than students. The legislature had to come in and stop that from happening. Other things, good government. Detroit Lighting Authority. We have streets in Detroit. We have a lot of problems in Detroit, but we had streets in Detroit where the lights weren't on. And we talked about the idea of privatizing it. Nobody would take over this organization if we tried to privatize it. So we had to make changes. And the frustrating part with this is we Republicans are willing to make the tough decisions for Detroit to help them, and we couldn't get the Detroit Democrats to come along because they wanted us in the same process to allow them to raise their local income tax higher. And they were trying to hold their people hostage with us. And we finally got the votes to get it passed, and something good for the city, hopefully good for the state. We also did some recall reform. In Michigan, the recall, all you had to do for the recall is to make sure that the language was clear. Not accurate, not true, but clear. They could go and try to recall me claiming that I'm a pedophile. It's clear. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. One of the recall things we did was say that it actually has to be true. So if they say that I voted against the bill, then it's actually there, it's on record, I voted against the bill. Again, they could go and say I voted against the bill when I actually voted for it. It doesn't matter. It was clear. So we've changed that and a couple other minor changes along the way that I think help give people a little bit more courage. Because we had recalls going on that were just outrageous, and we actually lost one of our members of the House to a recall 2 years ago. As far as improving education, well, first of all, we did an awful lot of education improvements 2 years ago, but I'm going to focus more on what we're doing here. One of the important things we did, we allowed community colleges in certain circumstances to offer some four-year degrees. Not every four-year degree, but limited ones. And we're identifying certain degrees that were out there that the four-year colleges were not meeting the need. And I'm a free market person. If the four-year colleges weren't going to meet the need that was demanded for, we were going to allow the community colleges to do so. And we did. They're allowed to do, and it's just a few minor degrees, but it's things like cement science. Who wants to teach that? Well, apparently Michigan State doesn't want to do it, but there's a couple of community colleges that thought that it was an important four-year degree for their area. And they couldn't do it until we changed this legislation. And there's a couple other minor ones as well. We also gave parents the opportunity to go and put their children into cyber schools. Now, cyber schools are not the answer for everybody. I think it's a very small portion of people that it is the right program for. But there are certain children, whether it's for bullying or whatever reason, going to school has been a drawback for them, and they've had problems. And we're expanding it to allow this to be one of the options. Now, the year before, when I gave this presentation, we talked about schools of choice that we have. We talked about the way we've greatly expanded charter schools, and it's been great, but this was one more step along those lines. As well as something we just passed recently, our Education Achievement Authority. And what this is, when a school is in the bottom 5% for 3 years in a row, and they show no signs of improvement and no plan to get out, the EAA comes in and takes over the school. And in the process, they get rid of the teachers, they get rid of the administrators. The teachers are allowed to try to come back if the EAA determines that they're a good teacher. They expand the school year to 220 days. They expand the school hours. And this is something that was very controversial, but in my opinion, and I don't know what your state is like, but I will tell you in Michigan, one of the greatest long-term problems we have are failing schools. We are creating generations of kids who are not capable of doing anything but go on welfare or commit crimes. And it's our faults, because we didn't do something about it. And this is saying that we are going to not allow failed schools to continue to send kids into society with no abilities. And while I like this, it takes over these schools, it puts them on a new path, and then eventually goes back to the old control. One of the good things about it is it's not costing us more money. This is not the state putting more money in, it's just changing the way the current funds are directed and the way it's operated. This is something I'm very strong supporter of, and very happy we got this through, because I think it could be important to the students who actually face the worst of the worst. And you have to understand that so many of these kids have already been helped by the charter school competition, but these are the people who are stuck in the absolute worst performing schools, and their parents don't move them into a charter school or a school of choice. Removing regulations, we banned project labor agreements. That was a big thing, of course, as you can understand. This is one of my fun ones. We allow certain types of fireworks. A lot of people like it, a lot of dogs don't. We repealed our helmet law, and a little bit of personal freedom there, allowing individuals to decide whether or not they want to wear a helmet while they're riding a bike and motorcycle. And of course, that also helps our tourism as well. We've had people who wanted to go through Michigan, the UP, and the whole way, whether they're going to Sturgis or whatever, and they would avoid Michigan because they didn't want to have to wear a helmet. We've actually eliminated in the past 2 years over 1,200 regulations, which is something we're very proud of. And it's amazing, most of these happen with bipartisan support. But isn't it amazing it takes the Republicans to put forward these bipartisan efforts? The Democrats weren't doing. The same problems were there, these regulations were out of date. The Democrats wouldn't put them forward, we had to do it. We're pushing for smaller government, eliminating bridge cards for inmates, believe it or not, some are getting food stamps. We removed the welfare recipients that had warrants outstanding. Again, that's pretty revolutionary, I know. Bridge cards for college students. We had an unbelievable number of college students who were getting food stamps, bridge cards. An unbelievable number. Now, in our days, when we were in college, it was mac and cheese and ramen noodles. Now they get to live on the state thinking a lot better. Of course, we are trying to do some asset testing, which has helped. And we allow for the elimination of road commissions. And this allows the local counties to decide if they want to reduce the size of their government by taking over the road commission. And one of the things we passed for welfare reform, I love it, and I can't believe this was ruled illegal by the federal government. We actually passed a law that would say that no longer, if you went and used your bridge card to buy soda or beer, it's going to do for beer, if you bought soda, you would have to pay for the deposit yourself. Because we had people going in buying the cheapest pop, going outside, dumping the pop out, and going in taking the returnables so they had cash. And so we passed that. Unfortunately, the federal government told us no. We eliminated trial courts, not because we were against trial courts, but rather that the Supreme Court did a study and said we had more than we needed, and we actually moved some around, but we're able to reduce a total of 36. Maybe most important, we led by example. We reduced our own budget by almost 14%. Tax reform, minor reduction in our tax rate, a slight increase in our personal exemptions. They're not huge, but they're steps in the right direction. This is another one of my favorite little ones. From now on, prisoners in the state prisons, when they buy something from their commissary, have to pay sales tax. So if they're going to go out and buy something that you and I have to pay sales tax on, now they have to. And to me, it's an only common sense approach. We're phasing out the personal property tax for manufacturers in our state. It's something that's going to take a while to fully be implemented, but it's a big thing, we believe, to help business and help job creation. If somebody's looking to bring in a piece of equipment now, they don't have to say, well, I want to bring that equipment in, but I'm going to end up having to cost us more money because we have to pay taxes on it. The idea that a company is taxed for making an investment in the state, to us, seems fundamentally flawed. Now the big issue that we've heard someone talk about, or so many people talk about with us, is right to work. And we love it. I will offer to the rest of you, if you're thinking about doing it, don't do it. These states have it. Repeal your right to work and let us be one of the very few that have it. We have no problem with that at all. But I want to concentrate just a couple minutes here on why we were able to pass right to work. Because it wasn't easy. It was really a lot of items coming together. And I want to talk about a few of them. First of all, the unions decided that they were going to show the rest of the country how they handle unions. And how unions worked in the state of Michigan was going to be a model. So they decided to put on the ballot Proposal 2 that took everything that they ever wanted in negotiations and put it into the Constitution. So right to work, we couldn't have passed right to work because if this had passed, the Constitution would have outlawed it. And it did a whole lot of other things. And our governor, who in the past had said, look, right to work is not on my agenda. But don't do this. This is not good for Michigan. Don't do it, he told the unions. And the unions did it anyway. And it failed almost 60-40. That gave a lot of our members who truly wanted to vote for right to work, but they were afraid. Now all of a sudden they've got a little bit of courage building up here because they realize if the union's top thing in the country failed so badly in their own district, well, you know what, maybe I can vote for right to work and still get reelected. One of the other things that helped us was the fact that we have an active lame duck. When we did this in lame duck, and because I followed Proposal 2, it allowed us to give people the freedom, and some people who were heading out and not coming back, it really did help make that possible. Cover and pressure. We have strong support in the business community for people who let us know and let our members know, look, if you get attacked, if you get recalled because of this, we will be there for you. We will help protect you. We are going to be there to make sure that you win your elections if this becomes the issue. And a little bit of pressure. We worked with the local, the statewide conservative organizations to help build a little bit of pressure among the members who were a little bit afraid to make that decision. Leadership is vital. In Michigan, we have our leadership trio, the governor, who said it wasn't on his agenda, but he still supported along the way. The Senate president, who wasn't a big supporter of it, but ultimately allowed it to go through, which takes some courage in itself. And Chase Bolger, our Speaker of the House, who was just an absolute bulldog on this issue and kept pushing it when other people didn't want it to go through. He made sure that it kept going. Messaging was vital. We tested messages, and the amazing thing about the message of right to work is, when you start talking to people about, do you think somebody should have to join a union just to have a job? All of a sudden, the things change. The union will tell it one way, but when you start talking about it, literally, it's a freedom to have a job without having to pay somebody to have that job. All of a sudden, things change. And the messaging works. We've tested messages, and they do work. And this is something that might seem obvious, but I can't emphasize enough, you can't do it without the majority. You can't do it without a strong majority. We had 64 seats at the time, now we're down to 59 out of 110. We could not do this right now because we don't have a strong majority. And for those of you who are donors, it's so vital. Things like this only happen because people like you help put us in place to be able to make these votes. We need your support to keep these majorities and to build them so we can make these broad changes. And, well, we've got things in the future, but I think the future is probably running out of time. So I'm going to move it along and see if you have any questions at all. Yes?
Hey, is there any movement to try and repeal right to work?
Yes. If there is, without a doubt. I would imagine that we will see next year on the ballot something to repeal it. The unions are trying to figure out what to do. They had looked at possibly trying recalls, but it doesn't appear that they're going to do that. I think some of the changes we made help with that, but also I think they realize that it's awfully expensive and they wouldn't be able to get enough votes, but we expect it to be on the ballot. One of the important things too is, people ask me what right to work is, well, who is the driving force? Is there one person? And the truth of the matter is, there were a lot of people, if it wasn't for them, this wouldn't have happened. I can probably name you 10 people that if we didn't have all 10 of those people on the same page, heading in the right direction, it wouldn't have come together. I mean, whoever would have thought Michigan became a right to work state? Now, I never thought I'd get a chance to vote on it, and I'm absolutely thrilled that I was. Anyone else? Yes, Frank?
I know it's very early, but any anecdotal evidence that companies that might not have located in Michigan beforehand are now considering Michigan as...
We're getting some of it, and I think that one of the problems is we don't do a good enough job of getting those out there, but it's still relatively new because it just took effect. One of the things we did run into is we didn't give it immediate effect, so it was almost April by the time it actually went into law. And we actually had a lot of school districts and universities extending their contracts. One university actually extended its contract 8 years to avoid it being apart. So the unions basically went to a lot of these schools and said, look, we'll give you whatever you want, but just make sure we have a contract extension. So you had the unions, in some cases, selling out their members, so that they could continue to collect dues. It was just amazing. That's the battle we have now. But we're expecting to get some more evidence of it, at least anecdotally, and I know we've got people on trade missions going on, and after hearing this, maybe we need a trade mission to Colorado, see if we can pick up some jobs out there. Yes?
Being from the state of Illinois,
And thank you for all that you do.
and as a company that's been a resident of Illinois for almost 40 years, we are now doing some due diligence on locating parts of our corporate offices, or all of our corporate offices, depending on what we find, to different states around the country. And they all have very similar corporate tax law. But what we have found is that there are some states are willing to negotiate even bigger incentives for moving companies, depending on the economic impact of the company. There's Michigan a state that either through the Economic Development Division or the Governor's Office.
The governor's office does have some abilities to do that, and they have some monies available for that. And I make sure we get your card before you leave or before I leave, and I'll make sure the right person gets that. It'd be nice to bring you in. But I think that as much as we have those available, I think that the overall change of environment, I think in and of itself is a great increase for the state of Michigan. We've turned things around, so much from where we were for our lost decade to the point where we're actually welcoming businesses and hope that you'll look at us regardless of those things. But we do have some of those available. Yes?
What good can you do for Detroit? It seems like it's a city that's doomed.
We recently put in place an emergency manager in Detroit who will go and do the finances for the city and all these, that aspect. But ultimately, I think that no matter what we do, what we try, I think Detroit's ultimately heading to bankruptcy. And we're going to try to avoid it, but that may just be what has to be done to save the money. All right, well, thank you very much.